mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, where I watch shit so you don't have to. And today I'm here to talk about Season 1, Episode 4 of Amazon Prime's The Peripheral, entitled Jackpot. Before I get started though, I want to again implore you guys to follow me on social media at One Mic Network. You can see it in the Chiron below. Or on Facebook, just search One Mic. That's when we putting news and updates, stuff like that. I'm going to be more engaging on there, so make sure you follow on there. And then also, I want to shout out my patrons. If you're curious about the Patreon, there's a link in the description that explains the Patreon and when you go to the Patreon, explains the tiers and all that stuff. Something in my eye. Explains the tiers and all that stuff, how much they cost, what you get for it, or you can look for a video called Major Announcement, and that breaks it all down as well. So shout out to my patrons, Delvin Cox, Factual, Dez, Justice Smith Williams, Brian Turner, Dancing Lights, Margaret Moffett, Esther Blount, and Adam Weiss. So I'm moving fast because I'm kind of short on time here, and there's a whole lot we got to discuss because this episode was fucking awesome, just like all the rest of them. I'm really enjoying this show, man. I'll get to that in a minute. Let me start with the, I think my fucking eyelashes are getting my eye or something. So the title refers to the apocalyptic event that happened in this world called the Jackpot. It seems like an ironic, humorous take on an apocalypse. Like, hey, let's make it sound like we hit the jackpot when we literally did the exact fucking opposite. It appears to have really gotten rolling in 2039, which is 7 years ahead of Flynn's current day in 2032. But I like the fact that once we get this explanation of the jackpot, it gives us a better understanding of the dynamics at play in Wilf's world and how and why these people interact with each other the way they do. So before I even get into the episode, I want to open with talking about the ending, the explanation of what the jackpot is. So Wilf and Ash take Flynn to this cemetery, but it's actually a museum where they break down what happened with the jackpot. A bunch of shapes, well I think it was just three, materialize in this cemetery. And Wilf says that they each represent a different phase of the jackpot. He says it's already kind of got started rolling in Flynn's time currently, but it doesn't really start popping off until 2039, which is the first phase. It's a blackout, a nationwide blackout that happens in North America and then spreads worldwide. And then in 2041, there's a pandemic. A whole lot of shit goes wrong. I'm just gonna read off a list of like buzzwords and keywords that Wilf says, or Ash, whoever explained this portion. A blood plague, some sort of virus that attacks the body, an environmental catastrophe, droughts, famine, antibiotic failure, agricultural collapse, full population collapse. And they reveal that over the course of 4 decades, 7 billion people die. And then the final phase of the jackpot is a domestic terrorist attack on a nuclear silo in Flynn's hometown of Spring Creek, North Carolina. So that obviously explains why Flynn becomes of importance in some way, why they would feel the need to go back to her time and fuck with her. But I think it's pretty clear that this is the event that takes place that either, I think, prevents Wilf and his crew from telling Flynn what happens to her stub, because he says at some point it becomes unclear. They're unable to tell her what happens to her stub, or it's like undesirable for them to tell her what happens to her stub, like they're refusing to do so. Either way, I think that's the event that takes place that causes the murkiness for Flynn's stub, which I said it was something having to do with Burton. I was way the fuck off. So again, this week, like I said, we get a lot of answers, just like last week. A lot of answers, a lot of clarity on not just, I think, like we get a lot of world building, I think is the best way to put it. And we get an idea, I think, a clear idea of where this show is going, like its direction. Like it almost kind of feels like these first 4 episodes were kind of like a prologue, so we can understand this world, understand these characters, understand what's going on. Like so we can know, like, okay, at some point if we see Burton inside a Burton Peripheral, we'll know what that means, know what actually is happening, all that kind of stuff. These first 4 episodes felt like world building, and I'm sure we're going to get a little bit more detail on what happened in the past, but I think we're getting a clear idea now of where this show is going to be going. And to me, it just continues to be like really fucking compelling exciting, interesting, thought-provoking. Like, I'll watch it, I'll be thinking about it. Like, well, like, just in between when I finished watching the episode last night and right now when I finished doing my notes, something clicked for me while I was thinking about it. And shows that stay with you after you watch them are the best shows. And this one always stays with me. I keep thinking about it afterwards, like, what does that mean? What did that mean? And trying to get a grasp on this world, these references, the Klept and the terminology, stubs and pulse, and like all of these things are so interesting to me, and I've enjoyed learning about them, and it's just been really fucking entertaining, man. I love this show, I really do. It has its issues, like it's not the best show like that there is, like I thought the whole, I'm gonna divert a little bit here. I thought the whole thing with like how the two guys in the 3D print shop were hacking the headset remotely and stopping Flynn from getting kicked out of her peripheral, like that was very like sloppily done. Like they hand waved away like any kind of explanation for how that's possible or why those guys would do that. I could have used that, but like that's the kind of like those are the little things that I think the show is like. Okay, you could have given that a line or two of explanation, but like that's nitpicky at that point because I just really enjoy this show. So let's see, where am I? Let's move on. I guess I want to talk about what we learned in this episode and what I think it means and what it. Well, I was about to say what I think it means and what we learned. Like, what the fuck? What am I talking about? I'm sorry, I'm in a hurry because I'm pressed on time here, and I want to make sure I at least talk about all of these important things that I wanted to talk about before I'm out of time. So that's why I'm talking fast, but I promise I'm gonna get to everything. We've already gotten a decent amount of the way through. But now I want to talk about, because talking about the jackpot, I think talking about the jackpot first and giving an explanation of what that is makes it so that I can discuss the things that preceded it a little bit better, because now we kind of have like a frame of reference. It's like we have like Flynn's time from before the jackpot. The jackpot is like the focal point, like the middle point, and then we have like post-jackpot time. So then I can kind of like refer to stuff. So I'll just get going. We open with a scene from 2075 that takes place with Elita and Wilf as kids. He's still being called Wilf by Elita because she's calling him by his name. It's clearly a post-apocalyptic world, and I had that in my notes. So when they called the jackpot an apocalypse, I was like, nailed it to myself. But Elita kind of seems to serve as Wilf's protector during this time. Like he's getting bullied by these other kids on this like abandoned bus, and Elita protects him. But the kids make him go investigate this. It looks like a camp kind of setup, like a bunch of people walking around, vehicles. But when Wilf goes to investigate / spy, he realizes it's kind of like a digital projection. He ends up throwing a rock at it. It disturbs the projection enough, and then we see there's like two guys in like hazmat suits, and they end up capturing him and Elita. And there's a few things I want to discuss from this scene. One, I wonder if this is going to eventually lead into the moment that child Elita references in the very first scene of the very first episode, where she says something like, remember the last time I gave you my shoes, or something like that? I wonder if like whatever they're referring to during that conversation is going to make a little bit more sense when we see how their story plays out. So I'm interested to see what happens with the two of them and what kind of adventures they're going to get on. But next thing is that obviously this takes place after the jackpot seems to have already been completed. The world's, there's nobody around, whatever, right? Were Wilf and Elita born after everything with the jackpot was done? Or is there something special about maybe them specifically, or about kids, or about certain kids that allowed them to live through it? Because if they were born afterward and really only the Klept survived, that would make Wilf and Elita Klept. But then we know that they're also like adopted. So it's like learning about their past is intriguing to me, but I'm curious where their birth like falls into the jackpot timeline, and depending on where that is, like if it's after everything is over, even then I would still want to know like, okay, who are their parents respectively? Like who is, because obviously they're not gonna have the same set of biological parents. What happened to Wilf's parents? What happened to Elita's parents? Did they die during the jackpot and then these kids became orphans? But like, there's just so many different things that could have happened that put them together. And I'm just curious about the details behind how they come out of this. One of the few humans who lived through this whole thing, how did them as kids, how they get through it and end up growing up and becoming adults. Furthermore, we learn from Lev that he doesn't expect present-day Elita to live much longer, because after Wilf shows that he has her implant and something from the peripherals of the two surgeons, I don't know if they're surgeons, whatever, he says he doesn't expect her to live much longer without the immunity boost from her implant. And I'm wondering, does everybody who's living in this post-apocalyptic world have an implant with an immunity boost? Because maybe like the world is so toxic at this point, again, nuclear situation, the world is so toxic that they need an immunity boost? Or is there something like maybe like an ailment that Elita specifically has that causes her to need an immunity boost? Like she has a terminal illness, the immunity boost helps her live, and without that, the illness will kill. Like, I'm curious about that. So like, again, this show answered questions, and it's like, here's one hand where we're going to answer some questions. Here's the other one where we're going to give you more questions. But the questions that they're asking are just as fucking interesting as the ones they just finished answering. So I don't feel frustrated like, oh, you answered one question, but now you pose 17 other ones like Westworld like to do. And then it will pose 17 questions that leave you in a place of what the fuck does that mean? As opposed to, I understand what these questions mean, and I'm super fucking excited to get some answers. So that's something that this show does a little different than Westworld that I really appreciate. Like, it allows me to come up with these questions on my own, but it's like, it's not a thing where it's like Westworld will be like, here's something that makes no fucking sense. And then you go, what does that mean? That's not the kind of question I want to have. So I really like that. We also learn that the Klept survived the jackpot through either extreme violence, if you ask Charisse, or from sticking together, if you ask Lev. He gives a great quote to describe how his perception of how the Klept survived. He said that they, essentially they stuck together. He said, strike one of us, strike us all, and suffer accordingly. God damn, that's a dope line. And then I love how he says that, like, or I'm sure you could put it more eloquently, like, you could use my toast as an example. We'll talk about the toast in a little bit, but I thought that was a great diss track from Lev there, because the toast thing was really fucking stupid. But I'm not entirely clear on who the Klept are, but as much as I can gather, I look at them as kind of almost like, not a political party, but a party of people, like a group of people that exist within this world, just like Nazis. Although Nazis were a party as well, but like, I feel like the Klept is kind of like that, like a party of people, and they were just like a bunch of, basically, I think the world elite, rich and powerful motherfuckers, and they survived the jackpot from just being rich and powerful motherfuckers. Like, they probably had the means to, live underground for decades or, whatever. Again, interested to find out though. But as far as I can tell, the Klept are the people who survived this, the jackpot, just from being the world elite. When Wilf arrives at this country club-like place that Lev is at to tell him something that I'm going to talk about in a moment that Flynn told him, he has to be brought to Lev's table blindfolded. And Lev says that some of the older members of the club don't want to be glimpsed by interlopers. And like that, the way he says it probably doesn't sound that bad, but like that is such a shitty thing. Like, they don't even want an interloper is someone who doesn't belong in a group, right? So if you're the Klept and you're this group of rich and powerful elite, an interloper would be somebody who's not part of the 1%, right? But like, even that, like, I don't even want a person who's less than us to even lay their eyes on me. Is such a wildly arrogant and conceited and shitty and cool thing to say. And then I don't know if, like, when they call Wilf an interloper, is he an interloper because he's poor? Is he an interloper because he's not a Klept? Is he an interloper because he's black? Is he an interloper because of all of those things? I don't know, and it really doesn't matter. It's like, all you need to know is that they think some people in that club think so little of Wilf that they don't even think he has the right to look at them. And that's a wild fucking thing to say, man. That was probably my second favorite scene of this episode, was that conversation between Wilf and Lev. But all this kind of stuff is just informing us, again, the world building on what it's like in London in that time. And now we get an idea of like, we see it, we see like, oh, there's no people here or whatever. We see these big giant statues and all this kind of shit, which the Klept would obviously be behind. Like, we see all these things, and now we're starting to learn the why. And I really appreciate it, and it's super fucking interesting. Whew, boy, let's go. I'm loving this show, man. I'm like, can't even take a breath, because I've been thinking about it the whole time, and I'm like, I can't wait to record this video, man, because this show is so fucking cool. Another thing I liked is that after Burton apologizes to Flynn for episodes 1 through 4, everything that he's done, Flynn speaks so highly of the headset. She's like, I don't even care. The headset is so fucking lit. I don't even have to apologize for shit. It's the greatest, most world-transcending shit I've ever experienced in my life. I'm like, okay, could you sell Burton on going into the headset without your permission any more than you're doing right now? And then they smash cut to like Burton's friends talking him out of going. I'm like, he's definitely gonna want to go in there now. But then, okay, here's the thing that kind of disappointed me though. They said like Connor's like, wait, she get a body in there? I'm like, oh shit, Connor's gonna go in there instead of Burton? Yeah. And then Connor goes in and they're like, hey, this isn't Flynn, shut it down. I was hoping to see something super fucking cool. And Connor goes in, he runs off, and he gets shut down. I'm like, I was looking forward to that. But anyway, I mentioned that the conversation between Wilf and Lev was probably my second favorite scene. My third favorite scene was the Jackpot explanation, which I just loved it for the information. But my favorite scene of the episode takes place when Charisse meets with Lev. She says that Elita stole something, which I'm guessing is the headset that Flynn is using to get into. It's weird calling it future London because it's present day London for them, but future for Flynn, whatever. But into London, future London for us. And she thinks that Lev hired Elita to steal this. And we learned that to be true in the conversation that Wilf had with Lev, because he says, I hired Elita to help me make stubs. And he's like, why would you want to make stubs? And he's like, hypothetically, what if we could use a stub to kind of test pharmaceutical drugs? And I believe that we can now deduce that the medicine that was given to Flynn's mom was made and tested by Lev and his people on stubs. And I'm like, that's a cool thing that they left unsaid, but kind of let you read between the lines, because they don't mention what was given to Flynn's mom. But this whole thing feels very like they already have this planned out for dozens of steps that we haven't seen yet. And this whole thing, him making this drug or whatever that's meant to help Flynn's mother, this was all part of the plan. They knew they were going to need to do this to sell her on who they are. So they did this. He did this. Lev, he did this to help sell Flynn on who they are. And I like the fact that they didn't directly say that he created this drug by testing it on stubs, but we're left to infer that. I thought that was really cool. But I think I diverted from the Charisse thing. Yeah. But I meant to divert from it because it comes back. So Charisse uses the toast, like I mentioned. She uses his toast to make this point about these 3-wall buildings that can collapse if any of the 3 walls oversteps their boundaries. And the 3 walls are the Research Institute, the Klept, and the police. And she tells this story of this guy named Yuri Samsonov, who was betrayed by his own people. And the way Lev squirms in his seat, I feel like Lev is the person who betrayed this Yuri Samsonov guy. And Charisse says they caught Yuri using something called an assembler swarm that can target DNA. And she said that they were able to use that to wipe out his entire lineage. If you want to really fuck somebody, you could use their DNA to kill them, but you can also use their DNA to kill everyone with their DNA, which would be, depending on the person, thousands of people potentially. So as if that's not a great enough threat already, she puts it in his mind, I bet you're worried about the fact that, man, that sounds like a really powerful weapon that's only been used once and is waiting to be used again. And he's like, I hadn't considered that, but now that you mentioned it, I am worried about that. And he looks out and sees his teacup going, oh, man. Like, you basically fucked at that point. She tells you about this and it takes your teacups, so now she got your DNA. Like, you're fucked. I feel like Lev works for Charisse now. like there's nothing he can do. But man, that assembler swarm thing was really fucking cool. So I really like that. I made it through all of my commentary on this episode. Well, not all of it. I have a couple of thoughts. So I'm gonna close with those thoughts and we'll be done. So you guys can let me know what you think about this fucking awesome show and episode. First thought, Cop Tommy comes and, you know, he's of course a suspicious fucking nuisance, and he comes like, hey, he like works too hard at being friendly. Like, he's like, yeah, you know, I'm cool, I'm one of the guys, I don't have my uniform on, you know, I'm here, I'll drink 2 sips of a beer because I'm a fucking rebel, right? Like, who's this fucking guy? But he's interested, but it's interesting that Burton discovered the stolen Tommy figurine in Flynn's trash can, and I'm wondering how Tommy being suspicious combined with whatever happened in their past, I'm wondering how that's going to play out. There's a lot of interesting plot threads here. Some, obviously the big ones that I talked about in the main portion of this video, but these little smaller ones, these are super interesting too. And again, world building. I wonder how Flynn's medical reactions to, you know, coming back to life out of the headset, wonder how that's going to come into play. Because now we've seen like it can like flare up visually and then go away. We saw that she had a seizure when she kind of like turned up on Burton. Like, what's up with that, and how's that going to impact her present day life? Charisse has a Daniel robot made, and I love that scene because I really like seeing how they initiated the what was it? The posture and gait I guess settings in this robot. It's like you see her like typing on his back. She like types in the air. And then she like does this thing like yanking on his arms, and like it's almost like I'm gonna pull your arms into the proper posture and gait. I don't know. I just thought that was really cool. But I like that level of attention to detail about letting us know what this life is like, the world building. When you make these robots that are meant to be like a real person who once lived, how they like, you know, just activated and stuff. I like those little things that let you know what this world is like. I like that kind of shit. If it serves no purpose other than I know that if they want to like activate the posture and gait in a robot or whatever, they could just kind of like they like yank on its arms, like, you know, whatever. Like, all right, there. Now my shoulders are good. Like, I like that. I liked Lev watching Wilf and his wife dance with those like contact lens cameras. Like, I didn't know what was. I'm like, at first I thought he was watching from like a balcony or something. And then I'm like, wait a minute, he has like, I'm like, they show the close-up of his eye. I'm like, wait a minute, he's watching like video in his eye. And then when Charisse walks up, you see him like tap his finger or something, like stop the video. And so I thought that was pretty cool, but I didn't like him calling Wilf his favorite pet though. That was unpleasant. When Wilf shows up in Flynn's VR headset that she's watching her memories with her father in, that felt so fucking intrusive. Like, is this like digital brain rape? Like, what the fuck? Like, how you just gonna walk up in somebody's memories and shit? He assumed she was gonna be watching Netflix, and then he like hacks into her VR. Is like, oh shit, you're having a very, very, very personal fucking moment right now. Here I am. Like, I feel like her anger in that moment should have been way higher. Like, that felt very like, that's way too intrusive. But in that scene, he mentions that Connor told him about her seizures. When the fuck did Connor do that? He was in there for like 2.5 seconds. Like, he asked Ash, who the fuck are you? Then he jumped out of a window, ran off, and then he got shut down. When the fuck did he tell them about Flynn having seizures? But like that's the little shit where the show gets a little bit messy that I just didn't like. But maybe I missed it. You guys tell me. I can't wait for Burton and Connor to get their own peripherals. That's gonna be fucking lit. And then lastly, before I wrap up, another thing that I thought was, again, the show being a little bit messy was that hacking situation. Like, I think I mentioned it earlier in the video. The 3D printing guys being able to like stop Flynn from getting kicked out the same way they did Connor. And she's just like, yeah, call them up. And they're just doing this remotely. I'm like, it took me a minute to even figure out what was going on because they did no kind of like setup for that. And when I say setup, I don't mean like you need to do like a whole ass thing. It could have been 2 sentences like, hey, reach out to so-and-so, see if they can hack my device, and stop me from getting kicked out the way they kicked out Connor. There you go. And now I'm buying what you're selling me. But like just watching that, I'm like, what the fuck is this? So it's those little things, that level of attention to detail, they could turn it up just a smidge. But other than that, man, again, loving this show, man. I really fucking do. It's really fun, really exciting. I'm loving the story. I'm loving all the different angles, all the different questions, the ones that are getting answered, the ones that they're not even being asked. They're making me ask these questions based on all the interesting things they're showing me in each episode. So, that's all I got. I will see you guys next week for episode 5. Let me know what you thought in the comments. Become a fucking patron. Give me money. Give me money. And I will see you guys next week for episode 5. Peace.